Every time before it gets dark, this man sprinkles alcohol on his front door. The moment he returns home, the first thing he does is clean his dog. The instant he notices the sun is about to set, he immediately seals the doors and windows shut with special steel plates. But even without a single light on in the house, he still doesn't feel safe. He clutches his rifle to his chest and curls up in the bathtub with his dog. Only then does he find peace. The reason this man has set up such intense security is because the moment night's darkness falls, the world outside no longer belongs to humans. Out there, terrifying hordes of zombies roam the streets spreading terror. Because roughly 5 years ago, in 2012, a virus unleashed devastation. This virus killed 90% of humanity, while 9% of people turned into zombies. These zombies fear sunlight. They only come out at night, and their sense of smell is extraordinarily sharp. Our story's main character, Will, has survived this virus because he belongs to less than 1% of the world's population who carry a strong antibody. Will was speeding through the deserted streets of New York in his Ford Mustang. He was chasing a deer right through the middle of the city. In a world where he is now the only one left alive, food has become the most basic and most essential need. But just as he was about to make the kill, a lioness suddenly pounced and cornered the deer before he could. Seeing his prey snatched away, Will considers shooting the lioness. Just then, a lion and a cub also emerge from hiding. Seeing all three of them, Will is reminded of his dead family. He doesn't pull the trigger because he knows the lions are maintaining nature's balance. Before heading out to search for other survivors, he goes down to his underground medical room and checks whether the mutant rats have normalized from his treatment. But he still sees no difference. Will is a brilliant scientist. He has developed a gene therapy based on a viral vaccine. Just when he thought today would be another disappointing day, he noticed that one of the mutant rats had lost the ability to attack, hinting that it was slowly returning to normal. If this experiment on the rat succeeds, he might be able to turn the zombies back into normal human beings. To search for survivors and zombie hideouts during daylight hours, Will leaves his house every morning at exactly 8 a.m. Every day he drives to the video store, changes the ladder, and greets the mannequins he has placed there. Watching this, no one could even imagine just how lonely a person must be to have to make mannequins his friends. He marks every location he visits on a map and collects food and essential supplies from those spots. In his search for other survivors, he calls out on the radio every day at exactly noon and drives all the way to the dock hoping for a miracle. But 3 full years passed. He never received a single reply. To ease the loneliness, Will spends his afternoons on the Enterprise aircraft carrier, standing on a plane and playing golf. But during this time, his dog notices something strange. There is movement somewhere in the distance. Will immediately picks up his rifle, looks through the scope, and spots a deer. Without wasting a moment, he sets off on the hunt with his dog. But then something terrible happens. The deer, running frantically, accidentally gets trapped in an enclosed space and panics, rushing inside a building. It seemed the dog hadn't had meat in a long time, so without any fear, he chases the deer straight into the building. Will tries to stop him. Will panics, but for the sake of his dog, he has no choice but to go inside. Inside, it was pitch black. Nothing was visible. Even with the video's brightness turned all the way up, the atmosphere felt even more terrifying and eerie. At this moment, Will's heart was pounding with dread. Even a mirror could have startled him. As he was searching for the dog on an upper floor, he suddenly heard a gut-wrenching scream. Fearing something bad had happened to his dog, he pushed himself forward with whatever reassurance he could muster. Following bloodstains on the staircase, he rounded a corner and spotted the severed head of an animal. The relieving part was that moving forward, he discovered it was a freshly killed moose. But the fear etched on the moose's face in its final moments was clearly visible. At the sight of this, Will raised his gun and began scanning in every direction. Then another horrifying sight came into view. In no time at all, a horde of zombies was less than 5 meters away from him. For the sake of his dog, Will had to summon his courage and go deeper inside. Finally, he finds his German Shepherd huddled beneath a table, looking absolutely terrified. Just as he was about to step forward and call out to the dog's eyes locked directly onto something behind Will's back. Will senses something is wrong. The moment he turned around, a horrifying sight met his eyes. Will and his dog bolted toward the exit like madmen. But in the end, they were caught by the zombies. However, the good news was that Will managed to leap out of a dark window just in time, and the moment sunlight hit the zombie, it immediately collapsed to the ground, wounded. Although what had just happened shook Will deeply, it also revealed a hideout. To conduct experiments on the zombies, Will set a trap outside. He drew a vial of his own blood and placed it at the building's entrance, then hid outside and waited. Truly, within just 2 minutes and 30 seconds, a zombie fell into the trap. As the trap activated and yanked a live zombie forcefully outside, suddenly, with a fury-filled roar, a zombie with a terrifying face burst out of the building. As if it wanted to devour Will alive on the spot. Even Will couldn't figure out why this particular zombie was so enraged. After returning home, Will threw himself into experimenting on the zombie. He had absolutely no idea that this female zombie was actually the wife of the very zombie king who had just been roaring outside. Because Will had captured her, the war between zombies and humans had fully ignited. He was the only living human in the entire city. But he was shocked when he noticed that one of the mannequins' head had suddenly moved. Even more unsettling was the fact that this mannequin, which should have been standing at the video store's entrance, had somehow ended up several kilometers away, and no one could understand how. Will drew his gun immediately and aimed it at the mannequin, thinking some human must have placed it there to communicate with him. But he saw no human nearby, because in reality, this was a trap laid by the zombie king in retaliation for Will capturing his wife. When Will walks up to the mannequin and crouches down to examine the water pool beneath it, the trap set by the zombie king suddenly activates, and Will is yanked up into the air, left dangling. The blow to his head knocks him unconscious. When the sun is about to set, Will wakes up to the sound of his alarm watch. The moment the sunlight fades, terrifying zombies emerge from the shadows. Will immediately pulls the knife from his belt and, in a panic, slices through the rope binding his legs. But the instant he hits the ground, the knife plunges straight into his thigh, making his situation even more desperate, as the last rays of the dying sun were disappearing fast. A moment later, Will sensed something was wrong. Terrifying sounds began echoing from the dark building in front of him. Then the zombie king appeared and unleashed 3 ferocious attack dogs. But the remaining rays of sunlight kept them from reaching him. Yet the moment the sun sets a few minutes later, the zombie attack dogs go berserk and launch their assault. At this moment, our main character is wounded. Between life and death, the one single ray of hope is his German shepherd, the one who stayed by his side through this apocalypse. This German shepherd is his only companion. His reason to live. His greatest fear is that his German shepherd might die. There was a pistol kept in the car. Will began crawling toward the car. But as the sun's final rays continued to vanish, the attack dogs intensified their assault. He had very little time. Enduring the pain, he rises and inches forward on all fours. But after a few steps, he collapses to the ground again. At that exact moment, the ferocious zombie dogs descend on him. But Will stops their attack with bullets from his gun. Then a second zombie dog lunges at him. In an instant, the savage dog's sharp teeth were about to tear open his cheek when the German shepherd arrives just in time and saves him. But the worst was yet to come. The German shepherd had been bitten by the other dog during the fight. Will's heart sank, because only Will carries the antibody, not the German shepherd. Back home, Will immediately administered the antiviral injection. He cradled the dog in his arms and clung to the hope that the German shepherd would recover. He was smiling and reassuring himself that his beloved companion would be all right. Then the German shepherd's fur began to fall out. When he lifted the dog's eyelids, he saw that the symptoms of the disease were appearing at the corners of the eyes, and the fatal signs were showing in his mouth too. Will's heart shattered. But reality forced him to make a devastating decision, and whether he wanted to or not, Will smothered the life out of his beloved with his own strong hands, the beloved who had kept him company through countless lonely, dark nights. He was completely broken. But at this very same moment, Will also realizes a troubling question. When a person infected by the virus turns into a zombie, they shouldn't have enough intelligence to devise a trap. And yet, how were they setting traps that were so distinctly human? When he glanced at the passenger seat and saw no sign of Sam, Will could endure no more. That very night, he took his car and drove straight toward the harbor and, without a second thought, launched an attack on the zombies. Although the car kept the zombies from harming him, they kept coming in endless waves. They surrounded the car completely and began smashing the glass. Then some zombies climbed a lamppost and brought it crashing straight down onto the car. Will was trapped inside. Seeing the crowd surging toward him, he frantically tried to escape the car. But even more zombies arrived. Then the zombies' leader gave the order to attack. Before Will could do anything, the impact flipped the car onto its side at the edge of the road, and the monster loomed right before him. Now Will was exactly like a deer trapped with nowhere to run. Death was closing in on him second by second. But right at this moment, a bright light appeared, as if a human being was making their way toward him. At last, he could bear no more, and lost consciousness. When he woke up, he found himself lying in his own home, with a wound on his leg bandaged. He noticed a woman beside him, accompanied by a child. 3 years had passed since Will had seen another human being. He didn't know how to speak to people anymore. The woman then began to introduce herself. Anna told Will that she had heard his broadcasts on the radio. She had come to New York with the child and waited the whole day, but Will never showed up. She was thinking of heading to Vermont, because that was a safe zone for survivors. Hearing this, anger flashed across Will's face. He told Anna that there was no safe place anywhere. All of America had been destroyed. Anna wanted to argue with Will, but Will suddenly snapped and raised his voice. He had always believed he was the last living person on Earth, and that belief had placed an enormous mental burden on him. In his despair, Will had become entirely reliant on science and logic, channeling all his focus into finding a cure for the virus. His entire life and every hope he had rested on this single goal. But Anna's news had suddenly shaken his worldview completely. She told him that there were survivors elsewhere, which meant that Will's years of loneliness and relentless work had perhaps not been in vain. Because right now, a living human being was standing in front of him. Will wrestled with his thoughts and emotions alone in his room for a long time. Finally, he accepted reality and stepped out. Anna urged Will to come with her to the quarantine zone. But Will flatly refused. He said he was not going anywhere. After this, Anna made her way into Will's lab. When she saw the female zombie lying in the ice, she couldn't believe her own eyes, and asked Will if he could truly cure this zombie. Anna then noticed hundreds of zombie photographs covering the walls. Will had been using them like lab rats to develop the vaccine. As the sun's rays began to fade, Will immediately sealed all the doors and windows. Anna again tried to convince Will to come to the quarantine zone. But before Will could respond, he heard a powerful commotion from outside. When he opened the small window and looked out, he saw a massive crowd of zombies advancing toward his home. Will could not believe what he was seeing. He had always done everything possible to conceal his scent, and yet a massive horde of zombies had managed to locate his hideout. Like monsters possessed, they began closing in on them. When Will looked more carefully, he realized that it was Anna who had led them here. When she had saved him the previous night and brought him safely home, she had not taken any precautions afterward. But there was no time to place blame. Will immediately switched on every powerful light in the vicinity. But what was shocking was that the zombies, who normally feared light, had suddenly become remarkably cunning this time. After destroying all the streetlights, they began advancing rapidly toward him. The frightened Will immediately activated the next layer of security and triggered all the surrounding bombs in one go. When Will looked out again, he found that all the zombies had been killed in the explosions. But when he called out to Anna, he received no answer. He rushed upstairs to find her. At that very instant, a zombie launches an attack on him. It seizes him tightly, lifts him clean off the ground, and hurls him onto a table. Helpless, Will takes a brutal beating. Just as the zombie believes Will is finished, it has no idea that Will has been playing dead all along. Seizing the moment, he grabs a screwdriver and drives it into the zombie. But the blow causes no real damage. The zombie picks him up and hurls him to the floor. Now, just as the zombie king snarls furiously toward him, Will quickly snatches a rifle from nearby. But the zombie darts away, as if it knows exactly how dangerous a human weapon can be. Will takes aim in every direction. But the zombie ducks directly behind a wall. So Will immediately lines up a shot at a gas cylinder and fires. The explosion sends the zombie flying outside. But even so, it isn't seriously injured. After that, it climbs the stairs and vanishes. When Will gives chase, he finds that it leaped out a window and escaped. Will quickly searches the house for the woman, and finds that there's another zombie in the room, while the woman and child are cowering in terror, hidden beneath a wardrobe. Will signals them to stay completely silent. He was preparing to take out the zombie with his pistol. But at that moment, the zombie spots them. To protect both of them from harm, Will has no choice but to summon his courage and rush inside, then opens fire on the zombie. But suddenly, a loud noise rings out from outside. When Will opens the door, the zombie king is roaring toward him. In reality, it had gone to summon reinforcements. Even more terrifying was the fact that their assault this time was not just mindless destruction, it was fully coordinated and planned. When Will looked out the window and saw the zombie commander, a deep unease rose within him, because the zombies no longer seemed like mere mindless animals. They had intelligence. All three of them sprinted to the basement. Will sealed the main door tightly, and Anna hid in the lab with the child. But then she witnessed something miraculous and immediately called out to Will. Will's vaccine was actually working, and the zombie king's wife was slowly transforming back into a human being. But at that moment, the zombies broke inside. Will quickly slammed the glass door shut. Will wanted to show these zombies that he could turn all of them back into human beings. But in the zombies' eyes, Will himself was the monster, because not only had he repeatedly captured their kind and experimented on them, but this time he had also kidnapped the zombie king's own wife. This sent the zombie army boiling over with rage. As the zombie king continuously pounded on the glass door, it was slowly beginning to crack. In this moment, Will had a revelation. While looking around in desperation, his gaze fell on a butterfly tattoo on the woman's neck. The instant he saw the butterfly, it was as if everything suddenly made sense to him. He immediately picks up a container and extracts serum from the zombie king's wife's body, because her blood was essentially a vaccine. It could create antibodies. He draws the serum out, sends the woman and child to safety through an underground passage, hands the serum to the woman, and seals the gate behind them. At that very moment, the zombie king shatters the glass door. Right then, Will pulls the pin on a grenade and charges headlong straight into the horde of zombies. And this is where this spectacular movie comes to an end.